Hello everyone, and welcome back to our Introductory Programming in C series. This is the start of Chapter 2, in which we'll be looking at inputting numbers, making calculations with them, as well as outputting the results. Before we do all of that, in this video, we'll be going over identifiers, and in future videos, we'll be looking at constants as well as variables. At the end of the series, we'll be doing a case study where we calculate the volume of a sphere. All right, so without further ado, let's get into this video on identifiers. All right, so an identifier is simply a name to represent a value. Now, there's a couple rules that you must adhere to when coming up with a name. The first is that it must begin with a letter or an underscore. The second rule is that it can contain any letters, digits, or underscores. And the third rule is that it can't contain anything else. So some examples of what would be a valid identifier is if we do name, that's totally valid. We could do name 123, that's also valid. What would be invalid is if we did name currency sign, because we can only contain letters, digits, or underscores, and the currency sign isn't any of those. Or if we did the number 1 and then name, that's also invalid, because it must begin with a letter or an underscore, and the number 1 clearly isn't either of those. Okay, so the identifier name doesn't have to make sense. However, it definitely aids in readability, and comprehension if you make an identifier name that does make sense and gives an indication as to what that identifier name represents, really. The only exception to this is if you use an identifier a lot in a limited section. So a limited section identifier. In that case, you can identifiers are usually just I or J, or just something really simple. Finally, there are some reserved words that can't be used as identifiers. An example of this is the word int. That can't be used as an identifier because it represents something else. All right, so good job getting to the end of the video. In our next video, we'll be going over constants and variables. If you have any questions, please post them below, and I'll see you in the next video.